Erev Tov, welcome back everyone. We continue Hilchot Pesach and we are holding Siman Taf Mem Vav 446. We can't begin without mentioning a word about the horrific scenes of today. And all that we can say is that Am Yisrael Chai, and we don't always see the light in all the darkness in the world and the evil in the world now. But we know one of the beautiful things about Judaism is that we always ascribe the vengeance to God. We never talk about human beings having nekama. Human beings meant to try to stay away from nekama, from revenge and for vengeance. And of course, we all have feelings of anger, vengeance, and revenge. And of course, we do everything we can do to defend ourselves, but at the same time, to recognize that ultimately the main nekama, the main vengeance, retribution, and consequence has to come from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's the only one who can do it completely. And so we hope, Bezrat Hashem, that the Torah we learn will be Lilu Nishmat, all those who have died. Tinishmatam Torah Hayim, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu bring safety to Am Yisrael. Amen. So, with that in mind, we now continue with Hilchot Pesach, and we are Siman Taf Mem Vav. I will post in the chat box a link if you want to follow inside. And there we are, Taf Mem Vav. So last week, if you recall, we talked about how we do Bi'ur Chametz. We finished off talking about the laws of Erev Pesach Shechal B'Shabbat, all the laws regarding to that, and if you still had Chametz, etc. And then we talked about how indeed we do Bi'ur Chametz. What's the correct procedure in doing Bi'ur Chametz? And we said for the Sfaradim, we have either you burn it, or you break it down and scatter it, or you throw it into the sea. So those were the ways we do Bi'ur Chametz. Now we move on to one chapter on what happens if you find Chametz in your house over Pesach, over each day of Pesach, what you do. And then we move on to the big chapter, which has many of the fundamentals of Hilchot Pesach in 447, which we will make a start on Bezrat Hashem. So let's go now. Taf Mem Vav, says the Shulchan Aruch, Mi shemotze chametz betoch hamoed ubo dalet seifim. What happens if you find chametz in your house during Pesach? Seif Aleph. Hamotze chametz bebeto, if you find chametz in your possession in your house during Pesach, imu bechol hamoed yotzinu v'yavarenu miyad. If it's during Chol HaMoed, then immediately take it out. So don't keep it in your possession so you won't come to forget about it, you won't come to eat it. Straight away take it out. And vivarenu miyad, and also immediately a person must get rid of it. Again, in the three ways which we've discussed, the Ashkenazim will tell you need to burn it, but for us Faradim, it's sufficient. Either you burn it, or you throw it down the toilet, or you throw it into the sea, so on. That's all fine. But you have to do this immediately, straight as soon as you find it. V'imu Yom Tov, however, if you found this on Chag, for the moment, let's assume Chag means the 1st and 7th days of Pesach. We'll talk about 2nd and 8th day outside of Israel in a moment. But if it's Chag itself, so the 1st and 7th day of Pesach, Yichpe alav kli ad halayla, then you shall cover it with a utensil until the end of the Chag. Ve'az yivarenu, and then you need to dispose and destroy it. So why can't I lift it up and carry it out? The answer is it's Muktze. This is Muktze Mahamat Gufo. This is one of the highest classes of Muktze, in that it's got no use, you can't eat it, you can't have benefit from it, and therefore it's Muktze and set aside, and therefore you can't touch it, you can't move it. You're allowed to touch Muktze, you can't move Muktze. So you can't move it. So I can't take it out of my possession. I can't carry it to the sea. I can't, even though I'm allowed to carry on Chag, I can't carry it to the sea. I can't take it out of my possession because I can't move it because it's Muktze. So the only option I have is I have to do something to remind me not to eat it. So I put something on top of it. And then straight after the Chag, when the Chag finishes, then I go and do Bi'ur. I destroy it after the Chag. Why can't I burn it though in its place? Remember, one of the ways of destruction of chametz is to burn it. So I can't lift it up, I can't carry it. But let's say it's in a place where there's a coals there and there's a fire there. I find it, let's say, I left in the fireplace some chametz I was burning a couple of weeks ago. I didn't completely burn, and I find it on Pesach. So why can't I burn it there? I'm not moving it. I'm burning it. The answer is because burning on Chametz, on Pesach, is only mutar litzorech, where there is a need, i.e. a need of ochel nefesh, a need of food. But burning, although one is burning in order to destroy, this still the poskim say is still forbidden to do, and therefore the only option you have is to cover it over and then destroy it after the Chag. So on Chol HaMoed, straight away take it out, destroy it. On first day and seventh day of Pesach, cover it over, and then straight after the Chag, when Pesach comes out on the first night, then you take it out and do one of the three forms of destruction. Now, a very important discussion in the poskim is as follows. Remember, we've learned many times that midoraita, once you do bitul, once you nullify before the Pesach, then midoraita, even if you have chametz in your possession over Pesach, it's not forbidden from the Torah, because it doesn't belong to me. I've nullified my ownership over it. Nonetheless, Hachamim say we have to get rid of it, destroy it, and so on. Second thing we need to remind ourselves what we've learned is that you cannot do bitul once the time of Isur has come in, because it no longer belongs to you. Bitul means nullifying ownership. You can't nullify ownership of something which doesn't really belong to you. The Torah only makes it yours for the purposes of you prohibiting transgressing this prohibition. But it doesn't really belong to you, you can't do bitul. So, what happens? Let's think about it. If for whatever reason I neglected to do a bitul chametz before Pesach, I didn't do kol hamira either in the night or in the day before Pesach. And now on the first day of Chag, I find chametz in my house. Now let's think about it. Every moment that it's in my house, what's happening? I'm transgressing an isur doraita of bal yara'eh or bal yimatzeh. You're not allowed to own chametz in your possession. Now, it's in your possession, it's in your house. You didn't nullify it before the Chag. So every moment that it's in your house over Pesach, one's transgressing bal yara'eh or bal yimatzeh. So many of the poskim argued and said that, look, in such a scenario, it would be better to violate the rabbinic prohibition of Muktze and carry it out and destroy it and violate Muktze, so that I won't be violating for the rest of the first day of Pesach the prohibition of Bali or Bali Matzeh, you mustn't own. If 100% the Shulchan Aruch is right, if I did bitul before. So I did bitul before the Chag, so I don't really own midoraita, I don't own. Rabbinically, okay, you have to get rid of it. But there's a prohibition of Muktze, so you have to wait till the end of the Chag. In the meantime, cover it over with a utensil. If I never did bitul, I neglected to do so. So then actually still belongs to me. So I'm violating a prohibition from the Torah. And therefore, many of the Rishonim held in such a case, the din of the Gemara that you cover it over and wait to burn it after the Chag doesn't apply. Then you must transgress Muktze. You must carry it out and you must destroy it on the Chag itself. So you won't be violating Bali Yareh or Bali Matzeh. Remember, you can't do bitul on the Chag. I can't now say I'm not nullifying my ownership. You can't do that anymore. It's too late on the Chag itself. You can't do Kol Hamira on Chag. So the only option you have is to take it out and violate Muktze rather than violating the Doraita prohibition. The Shulchan Aruch doesn't make that distinction, and this is because he is following the Rambam. The Rambam held that in all circumstances, one does not carry it, even though there's an Isur Doraita here and there's an Isur Rabbanan here. But nonetheless, because it's a Shev Va'al Ta'aseh, because the Isur Doraita is not you're actively engaged in committing a negative prohibition. You are violating a negative prohibition, but it's not kum va'aseh, you're not going and doing it, it's passively you're violating this prohibition, and therefore Rambam held that it's better to be over that rather than go beyadayim physically and actively to go and violate the prohibition of Muktze, even though it's a Darabanan. And this is how the Shulchan Aruch rules, because he doesn't differentiate. Some of the poskim argued, but generally speaking, the halakha taken on by both the Sfaradim and the Ashkenazim is like the Shulchan Aruch, and that even if you find it on the Chag, and even if you did not do bitul before the Chag, nonetheless, one would still not carry it, and one would still only do covering it over until after the Chag, even though one is violating in Isur Doraita. The best option would be, if you have the possibility, I'll take your question in a second, best option would be is, if you have a non-Jew, to ask the non-Jew, very good, so that would be the best possibility, and that would be fine. You can explicitly knock on your neighbor's door and say to him, come, carry it out, and go and burn it, go and destroy it, go and throw it down the toilet, go and do something with it. And that's fine, because although you're asking the guy to do Nisud Rabbanan, but the Tzorich Mitzvah, for the purpose of Mitzvah, is permissible. And so Shvud Dishvud, the Tzorich Mitzvah is mutar. And so therefore that would be the best option. But if you don't have a guy available, then some of the poskim will tell you then you should violate Muktze, carry it out, rather than transgressing the Isur Doraita. But as we said, the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch are posek that because the Isur Doraita is only a passive one, it's better not to actively violate the Isur Muktze. And therefore, one leaves it in all circumstances and covers it over, and then straight after the Chag, one burns it. Okay? Yes.
Rabbi, is there a distinction between gifting it to the goy or asking the goy to take it out and burn it? Because you don't own it if you gift it to him.
Yeah, but you're gonna have to do a kinyan. Theoretically you could do that. Theoretically you could do that. But you're gonna have to do a proper kinyan, and there's a problem of doing a kinyan. You can't lift up, you can't hand over, you can't do hagba'ah, you can't do mesira, right? Perhaps you could do handing over the maftech, handing over the key. If it was in a room, you give him over the whole possession of the room. Perhaps that could work as well. Yeah, theoretically there could be circumstances, but it would, yeah, but certainly one could. And don't forget, by the way, but don't forget, Mark, it's also gifting is also prohibition. So either way, there's a prohibition, meaning either way you're relying on shvud d'shvud l'tzorich mitzvah. So it really makes no difference. But that would be the best circumstance what to do. Okay.
When you say there's a problem with gifting it because of you're getting hana from it, because once you gift it to him, he owes you a favor, right? Is that?
You've got that as well, but here you're gifting it so that you no longer over the isur. So it's not. It's argued that that's not hana'ah, because I'm gifting it not because I want to give you something, but because you're trying to help me, you're trying to save me. It's not considered a hana'ah in that sense. You're telling him that you're doing me a favor.
Yeah, but he'll still remember that you gave him this £100 bottle of whiskey.
So that's I'm not. Yeah. The best would be just to ask him to take it and remove it and destroy it. That would be the best thing to do. Okay, good. Now the question. So that's be clear what happens on Chol HaMoed. On Chol HaMoed, you take it out, destroy it. On Chag itself, first day and seventh day, according to us Faradim, in all circumstances, one covers it over, even if one didn't do bitul before and is violating its prohibition. What about second day Chag? Says the Shulchan Aruch, Yesh mi shomer, some of the Rishonim write, the Yom Tov Sheni dino kachol hamoed le'inyan zeh. Second day Yom Tov, so second day and eighth day, because it's rabbinic in nature, therefore, here it would be better for you to actually carry it out and take it out like on Chol HaMoed. Although you're violating Muktze de Rabbanan, you don't have it in your house, the dangers involved in having it in your house. Therefore, because second day Yom Tov, one can be lenient and one can take it out. Mishnah Berurah is machriyan, this is how the poskim take on, that it depends, based on what we've learned. If you did a bitul before Chag, so that means you don't midoraita own any chametz in your house, so then don't rely on this and cover it over even on second day and even on eighth day. If, however, you did not do bitul, and therefore that means there's an isur d'oraita here, because remember the isur d'oraita bali matzeh applies all 7 days of Pesach. So then it would be better to violate the rabbinic Muktze on the second day rabbinic Chag, which is a double rabbinic, rather than violating Suda. Although we said the Rambam, the Shulchan Aruch hold that don't actively go and do any Isur Rabbanan against a passive Isur D'Oraita, but here, because the whole Chag second day is anyway the Rabbanan, here we can do two the Rabbanans and take it out, and that's the consensus of the Poskim. So if you find Chametz on second day Pesach in your house or eighth day Pesach, same din, unless you neglected to do Kal Hamira, both times before Chag, you neglected to do it, then indeed you would take it out on the Chag and destroy it on the Chag itself. So that's the consensus of the poskim with regards to that. Good. Sif Gimel. This is if you live in close proximity to a non-Jew. Remember, in those days, people shared the same courtyard, they shared the same living areas, and you lived with a non-Jew next door to you. So it says the Shulchan Aruch, "Gago shel eno Yehudi shaya samuch legago shel Israel, v'nitgagel hametz migago shel goy legago shel Israel." So you're living next to each other, and Chametz rolled over in the wind, or by mistake, one of his kids pushed it over into your possession. So you've got real Chametz bread rolled over into your balcony, into your possession on Pesach itself. What can you do now? Remember, you can't touch it. You can't. Now, you're not violating any Isur D'Oraita here, because it doesn't belong to you. But nonetheless, Hachem didn't want you to have Chametz in your house unless it's set aside and closed off, so because of the concern that you may come to eat it. So what's the options you have? You can push it aside with something else during, you push it away. Just you don't want to lift it up and pick it up because you may come to eat it, etc. So therefore, push it away. But you're not allowed, yeah. ואם היה בשבת או ביום טוב, כופה עליו כלי דאסור לטאטאו באותו בשבת. But if it's Shabbat or Yom Tov, where it's Muktze, then just cover it over. So this is an important point to bear in mind. I'll take questions in a second. So remember, we said that if you find Chametz on Chol HaMoed, you're allowed to pick it up and take it and carry it out. And that's fine. We're not meant to hold Chametz or touch it. Because your whole purpose of lifting it up and carrying it is to go and destroy it, we're not concerned in those few moments you're going to try tasting it. But this Chametz is not Chametz which is up for destruction. You're not allowed to destroy it. It doesn't belong to you to destroy. It belongs to the Goy. So you can't destroy it. So therefore, you even on the Moed, even on Chol HaMoed, you mustn't pick it up and take it to your next door neighbor and give it to him. Because there is the concern, although there's a theft involved if you do end up eating some of it, but there is the concern, it smells good, it looks good, you may come to eat it. And there we say, okay, so then push it away with something else. Take a stick and push the Chametz with the stick into his possession. But on Shabbat and Yom Tov, you can't do that. Why? So this is important to recognize in Hilchot Muktze. We're digressing for a moment. In Hilchot Muktze, there are two kinds of Muktze. There is Muktze, which is called Tiltul Min Hatzad, moving indirectly. And there is Muktze, which you're moving with a Shinui, in a strange manner. The halakha in the former is that it's Asur, in the latter it's Mutar, which means as follows. Tiltul min hatzad, moving indirectly, means if I have Muktze, it took Shabbat, I have Muktze, I have a phone on my bed. So now to take a stick and prod it off my bed, that is Tiltul min hatzad. And that is, it's sometimes prohibited, sometimes mutar. Not to go too much in details, actually in the scenario, the example I gave wasn't a good example because there would be permissible actually. Because when you're doing tiltul min hatzad litzorech davar hamutar, then it's permissible. So the point is that sometimes pushing something indirectly is still asur. And here, to push indirectly, i.e. with a stick, that's going to be asur. So you can't move it in that fashion on Shabbat, on Yom Tov. And therefore, the only option you have is to cover it over. Now, theoretically, You could move it al yidei shinui. Shinui is different. Shinui means when I move it in an indirect fashion, not indirect in a strange fashion. So I move it with with my elbow, something like that. That is called tiltul b'shinui, and that is mutar on Shabbat. That's always mutar on Shabbat. If there's any need, you're allowed to move things b'shinui in all circumstances, really. So that's but tiltul min atzad, indirectly prodding it with something, that's going to be an issue. To lift it up in an indirect way, yeah, let's say you take with your two elbows and you start lifting it up, something like that. That's a problem, because although it's not tiltul, but you've got a problem of moving and touching the chametz on Pesach. You may come to eat it, but to just with your elbow prod it away, that would be mutar to do. So to summarize, if chametz of a non-Jew ended up in your property on Chag, you're not violating any sur doraita, but midrabanan you have to get rid of it. And so if it's during Chol HaMoed, you don't want to lift it up and move it. So take a stick, prod it away. If it's on Shabbat Yom Tov, you don't want to do that. So then just cover it over and wait for the goy to collect it, or after the first day Pesach, second day Pesach, then you prod it back into his domain. Okay. Yes, Robert?
A quick question. Why didn't we say earlier, when I was mentioning that people, dropped Weetabix on Chol HaMoed one year, that your Hatzer would be kone? Like if my apple falls into my neighbor's garden,
If
I
it's
think
if it's hefker, not if it belongs to him. Just because it's something, if something belongs to someone and it falls into your property, it doesn't become yours.
okay. Only when either he wants to give it to you or he makes it.
If he wants to give it to you, that's a different issue. That's a different issue. Yes, that may be. If he wanted to give it to you, and he pushed it into your possession, so you can say, I don't want to take possession over it. I don't want to be koneh. But if it's something which is hefker, for example, the Weetabix coming through your letterbox, that's hefker really, because that's not.
Well, but the company wanted to give it to me, so I would argue.
Yeah, but it's
The same case, no? I mean,
yeah.
they
In such a case, in Achnam, perhaps then you'd have to definitely be kofar of. Well, you're going to have kofar of kli anyway. Even chametz which belongs to you, we've learned you cover it over the utensil. So you're right; it may be a bit more severe, potentially, but you'll just cover it over. And you destroy it after Pesach. In a case where he told you, I wanted to give it to you, I wanted to belong to you, it's my gift to you. It could be an just trying to mock us, and he's trying to throw chametz into our possession and say, here you are, chametz. It belongs to you. I don't want ownership over it. So then kofar lav kli. You can't carry it. Kofar lav kli, and you'll have to destroy it after the chag.
Thank you. Right.
And Rabbi, if it was truly hefker, because remember I told you I had an incident where an animal or something had taken a whole slice of bread and it was in my garden.
Yeah. So then, same thing. You're going to have to put a lot, but that's more severe in the sense that potentially belongs to you. But there's nothing you can do about it. Nothing you can do about it. And also, by the way,
to me?
Huh?
Does it belong to me? I didn't want it. It was someone else.
Yeah.
I don't know whose it is.
But your courtyard or hatzar koneh. If something hefker, a courtyard acquires it. If something is hefker, then
even when it's not in your interest.
Okay. So one second. So if you saw the time it came into your hatzer,
yeah,
then if you have negative intention, then you can stop it being koneh. But by default, it happens. So if you woke up in the morning and the fox has come and taken a whole loaf of bread into your garden, which is possible, then that potentially belongs to you because your hatzar is koneh. Unless before Pesach you have in mind, you have this issue, you've got animals coming around, taking stuff around, so you come before and you say, I explicitly, I'm being megale da'at, I'm explicitly holding and believing that my chatzar should not be koneh any hametz. In a chanama, negative, it can't go against your will, then that would work. When you never thought that, we don't think about that, and then it ended up, then it would belong to you. And by the way, this is potentially more severe because the kal hamira which you did before Pesach is not going to work for this.
Yeah.
But that's fine. You're anus. The Mishnah Berurah says this. You're anus. it's what can you can't do anything about it, you know? Yeah. Okay, some of the poskim will tell you that in such a case better violate Muktze, but no. In this case, here everyone would agree that you just put the utensil over it because I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't forget. I didn't leave it here. I'm completely honest. So all you have to do is cover it over so you won't come to eat it. That's Mishnah Berurah. Anus, but you can't do anything about it. Okay, one more halakha in this chapter, a remarkable halakha, really remarkable. In practice, I don't think anyone's gonna do this, but it just shows you the principle. Says the Shulchan Aruch, Matzah pat bepesach bebeto. You find bread in your house on Pesach. Ve'eno yodeh mu chametz o matzah. And you have a serious doubt. Is this a matzah or is this a piece of bread? Now, as we'll learn clearly later, but obviously this doubt is not possible with the matzot which we buy nowadays. Because how on earth will you confuse the cracker matzot with the bread which we have nowadays? So clearly the Shulchan Aruch talking about the matzot which he used to use, which is the way Sfaradim should really use the matzot, which are thick matzot. That's the real matzah. And that's potentially, you've got a bag of matzot like that. And you have a bag of pita, lafa pita. It could be a lafa pita bag. It could be a matzah bag. So you don't know which one it is. So what do I do? There's a doubt here. So what would you say? Of course, you have to go and throw it out. No. Mutar afilu b'achila. You're allowed to eat it on Pesach. Why? The azlina batar batra. Because we go after the last, meaning the hazakah is that it came from recently. This is not talking about it's moldy, it's fresh. Because it's fresh, and remember in those days things didn't stay as fresh as they do nowadays. And so the presumption is, and you can rely on the hazakah, that it came from now, and therefore and because also you did bidikat hametz. Another reason the Mishnah writes is because you did bidikat hametz. So the presumption is that this is going to be matzah. You can rely on that presumption. You can eat it. Okay. Shara continues and he says, if it's moldy, it couldn't have become so moldy from beginning of Pesach, so then you have to throw it out. Okay, more details about how moldy, etc., and all of that. But this is the psak in the Shulchan Aruch. Theoretically, in the Shulchan Aruch, if you had a serious and genuine doubt about this piece of food here, is this did this come from after I cleaned my house, or was it something left over from before I cleaned my house? One can rely on the fact that the presumption is that it came from now, it came from the most recent, and therefore I can eat it on Pesach. Of course, there's going to be variables here. If I know that I put my matzot in a certain place and here I find them in another room, so then there's a hole in the presumption. Talking about there's a 50-50, you have absolutely no idea, right? And you find it there and you don't remember putting it there, but on the other hand, you remember clearing out, so it could be not. So then, in such a case, one's allowed to eat it. Biur halacha, the Mishnah Berurah doesn't like this at all for obvious reasons. Also, he says that one of the Rishonim, Rabbeinu Hananel, understood that this whole din this is din in the Gemara, by the way, din in the Gemara. Rabbeinu Hananel understood this whole din in the Gemara was only for the purposes of that it's not going to be, you don't have to worry after Pesach and destroy it. Because remember, Chametz sha'avar lava Pesach, you can't have benefit from. So Rabbeinu Hanan understands the Gemara is talking about that after Pesach you can have benefit from it, but not on Pesach itself. Now, is one opinion, and his understanding the Gemara. Some of the Rishonim didn't bring this, and therefore Biur halacha says better not to rely on this. In practice, I don't think anyone's going to rely on this, but just a remarkable idea here, which Shulchan Aruch is ruling. So to summarize this chapter, and we'll take questions, is that if you find chametz which belongs to you in your possession on Pesach, if you find it in Chol HaMoed, take it out, destroy it. If you find it on first day and seventh day Chag, cover it over, even if you did not do bitul before Pesach. If you found it on second day and eighth day of Pesach, then it depends. If you did bitul before Pesach, then cover it over. If you did not do bitul, then you should take it out and destroy it on Pesach, on second day and eighth day itself. If a non-Jew's chametz came into your possession over Pesach, if it's during Chol HaMoed, don't lift it up, because here you're not coming to destroy it. So there's a concern you may come to eat it. So just prod it away with something back into his possession. If it happened on Shabbat and Yom Tov, where you can't move it because of Muktze, then the best would be for you just to cover it over. And the final halakha in this chapter is with regards to if you found food which you're uncertain, you can, in this very specific scenario, assume it's matzah and not bread, and one's allowed to eat it. Okay, before we move on to chapter Taf Mem Zayin, any questions?
Just an observation that it actually is still possible today because the matzah factories occasionally make matzah that's not kosher Pesach. You see it in the shops. It says not suitable for Pesach use. So you could theoretically have mixed up a sheet of that matzah with a sheet of the kosher Pesach matzah. And then, so I'm trying to say that's a way that maybe you could apply this halacha today. I mean, the chances are that matzah is not really authentic, but you see in the shops boxes of matzah that says not suitable for Passover use.
Okay, so what happened? So you found a box of matzah on Pesach without a box. You just found the pack. You just found the matzot themselves. And why did the doubt? Where's the doubt from that perhaps this is?
Well, the rest of the year you bought matzah that wasn't kosher Pesach. You also know that recently you just bought some that's kosher Pesach. Now you have the little plastic wrapper without the box. So you don't know which one it is. Is it the one I bought 3 months ago, which is still fresh? It's in the plastic. It's still edible. Or is it the one I bought last week in Kosher Kingdom, et cetera, et cetera? So you can apply this halakha, right? You don't know which matzah you've got.
So you can assume because you did bidikat Chametz and because it's the most recent one that this would be matzah, kasher matzah, correct?
Correct. That's what I'm saying. I was just saying that it's still shaykh today. You could construct a scenario.
You could construct a scenario, but if I was asked a question like that, if that happened to me, I would, because of Rabbeinu Hananel, I would actually say not to eat it and to follow the one opinion of Rabbeinu Hananel because there is a potential karet.
Well, surely Rabbeinu says you wait till after Pesach, then you can eat it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm saying.
Yeah, you have to throw it out. You just have to wait.
Of course, you have to throw it. Of course, you have to throw it out. My point is, you can eat it now. Right? So I'm saying.
Yeah, I get it. Right, just checking that.
I would say don't do. Eat it after. Okay. But yeah, good point. Very good point. Okay, good. Now we come to a big chapter. Siman Taf Mem Zayin 447. Din Tarovet Chametz L'Chabed B'Yubet Seifin. 12 halachot with regards to mixtures of Chametz on Pesach. Now, in order to understand this chapter, one needs to know the basics of the main concepts in Kashrut in Yoreh De'ah. So I'm gonna now, for a few minutes, stop for a moment, just give you a brief overview of the main halachot which are relevant, because otherwise it won't be understandable, the points which we're discussing here, and then we'll see how they are applicable in these on Pesach. Because in some senses, the halachot of Pesach are identical to regular laws of kashrut, but in other senses they're not. So it's important to understand how the laws of kashrut work during the rest of the year before we can talk about what happens on Pesach. Okay. So basically it's as follows. There's a few principles. Principle number one is, again, we're talking about the whole year round now. Forget Pesach, let's talk about the whole year round. Principle one is that lach belach. Lach belach means liquid with liquid. So classical example, you've got non-kosher sauce and kosher sauce, and they got mixed up together. So there, because it's liquid, the atoms intermingle with each other. And so they completely become infused in one another, and the taste transfers from one to the other. So here, you cannot rely on majority. You have to have 1 in 60. Why? Because here it's ta'am ki ikar, there is a taste. And therefore, the Hachamim said, until there are 60 times more kosher than non-kosher, there is a chance that you can still taste the non-kosher sauce. Or let's say you mixed kosher wines and non-kosher wines got mixed up and intermingled with one another, poured into one another. So again, it's lach belach, it's liquid with liquid. And therefore, you need 1 in 60 in order to become kosher. You're going to need 60 times kosher wine against the one non-kosher wine. Now, Okay, this is not so relevant here, but just in parentheses really quickly, according to the Shulchan Aruch, according to Sfaradim, sometimes you can even do less than 1 in 60, meaning if you gave it to a non-Jew and a non-Jew tasted something and said, I can't taste, you have to be someone who really understands tastes and appreciates taste and is able to say that there is none of this non-kosher taste in it, then theoretically, according to the Sfaradim, Shulchan Aruch, you're allowed to eat it. The Rama, for obvious reasons, said we don't rely on that because many reasons. Generally speaking, we just rely 1 in 60 nowadays, and we don't give it to a non-Jew to taste and to see whether there's, because it's not the Hachamim said until 60 there definitely is taste. They said from 60 there definitely is not taste. Now 50 perhaps yes, perhaps not. 40 perhaps yes. They weren't sure, so they said it depends on the taste, depends how strong, it depends who you ask, etc. But generally speaking, we say 1 in 60 and that's it. Now one other point with this is you need to recognize that there are two kinds. So we've talked about lah belah. That's moist and moist, liquid to the liquid. You need to recognize that there are two kinds of mixtures. There is min bemino or min b'sheino mino. Min b'sheino mino means two things got mixed together, two liquids got mixed together, and they are different foods and different, not just different foods, but different flavors. Let's put it simply like that. Different flavors. And that which we said, 1 in 60, you need is from the Torah when they are different flavors. Because there is a ta'am here, there is a taste here, and there's an infusion of taste. The Hachamim said until 1 in 60, we're not sure, therefore, the problem is a biblical problem. There's a ta'am, there is a taste here. After 60, we know for sure there's no taste. However, min b'mino, if the two flavors are exactly the same, so you have, let's say, wine, same kind of wine, but one was pressed by a Jew, one was pressed by a non-Jew. So that's a min b'mino. It's the same category, it's the same kind of food, the same taste. Then midoraita, then it's sufficient for it to be its majority. But the Hachamim came along here and said, gezerah, for min b'sheino mino, that you always need 1 in 60. So just to add a point here, that when we say lah belah, liquid with liquid, you need 1 in 60 from the Torah. That's only when it is min b'sheino mino with different flavors. If it's the same flavor, then midoraita, majority suffices. Midrabbanan, you still need 1 in 60. One final point with regards to this first principle is that which we say liquid with liquid is not just liquid with liquid, it's also if a solid falls into a liquid, that's still got the status of liquid with liquid. So if a piece of kosher meat falls into non-kosher sauce, that has the status of what we discussed just now. That's called lahbel, although it's not liquid in liquid, but because there is a liquid involved in this mixture, the liquid infuses the piece of meat, and then again, you're going to need 1 in 60 meat over the sauce in order to be kasher from the Torah. Unless it's, from the Torah, you're going to need 1 in 60. Okay, good. So that's principle number 1. Principle 2 is, when you have two solids, so no liquid here, and they are hot, they are both hot. Let's put this like this first. If they are both hot, so you've got a piece of kosher meat, you've got a piece of non-kosher meat, and they're both hot. And hot, by the way, what does hot mean? Hot means yat soledid bo. It has to be 45 degrees plus. They touch each other. So here, the halakha is you don't need 1 in 60. Because it's not the same. So the movement of the atoms in the solid not the same as the liquid. Here it's sufficient what we call kedei netila. Kedei netila means you take away about a thumb off where it touched. So let's say you have kosher meat here, non-kosher meat here, touched each other. So you have from the kosher piece of meat, you have to take away a thumb off that meat, slice it down, get rid of it, and you can eat the rest of the meat. If one piece of meat is hot and the other is cold, then kedei klipa suffices. What's kedei klipa? Kedei klipa is literally one sliver. Take off a sliver, and that's good enough. If both pieces are hot, so then you need to take away a thumb, a thumb. That's called kedei netila from the kosher piece. If one is hot, one is cold, it doesn't matter which one, but one is cold, therefore the transfusion is of a lower level, and therefore it suffices for a person to take what we call kedei klipa. However, good. However, there is an exception to this rule. And the exception is if either of the pieces of meat, is everyone still with me? I know it's confusing. Is everyone still with me? No? What's the question? Mar, what's the problem? What would you want me to repeat?
I lost you at the klipa.
Okay, very simple.
Does it relate to Rov?
No, there's no Rov. There's no din in Rov. There's just touching each other. There's tam. There's a transfusion of taste there, but it's a solid transfusion. So it's not like we learned in principle 1 of lah belah. So if both pieces of meat, the kosher and the non-kosher, are hot, yad soledet bo, you take from the kosher piece kedei netila, which means a thumb. If one piece is kosher, one piece is hot, one piece is not hot, regardless of which one, you just take away kedei klipa, a sliver. This is not mixing to get, there's a transfusion here. There's a tam keikav, there's a taste here. And therefore you get rid of the taste either with kedei netila, a thumb, or kedei klipa, a sliver. The exception to this rule is if either of the pieces of meat is shamen. Shamen means very fatty. There's bubbling over. If there's fat and bubbling over, then we need to be concerned that the bubbling in the fat can actually transfuse to the entire piece. And so then we say it gets, because of the shamen, the fattiness and potential liquid and fat involved, then you need 1 in 60 here. So you're going to need 60 pieces of kosher meat against the non-kosher meat in this whole thing. Okay, but yeah, in practice, yeah, okay. So that's principle number 2. Let me just say one more principle and we'll take questions. And principle number 3 is that when you have a ta'arovet, you have a mixture, but without necessarily infusion of taste. So for example, got mixed together in the same bag, kosher meat and non-kosher meat. I don't know what's what. They're not cooked with each other. They haven't touched, they haven't transmitted to each other, but they're all mixed together. And I don't know. So this is not tam now. There's no taste. The first 2 principles talked about was a taste issue. There was a tam issue. Here it's not a tam issue. It's just there's a tarovet. There's a mixture here of kosher and non-kosher. So here, midoraita, majority is enough. Meaning if you've got if you knew you had 2 pieces of kosher meat and then a third piece of meat ended up in your bag together, and they're not touching them, but it's just together, so then you can say it's fine from the Torah. The Hachamim said here a gezerah that if it's min b'sheino mino, if there are 2 different flavors of food, then you need 60. Why? Because the gezerah, you'll come to cook it together. And if you cook it together, then you've got lah belah, you've got liquid and liquid. You definitely can't, if you're relying on majority, you can't go and, you can eat it, each one plain, separately. You can't now go and cook it together. But Hachamim are concerned you will come and cook it together. And therefore they said, if it's a min b'sheino mino, even though there was no transfusion of taste, and even though midoraita, you can go 2 and 1, you can go after majority. But because it's min b'sheino mino, you need to have 1 in 60 as well. So to summarize, these are the 3 main principles. There are more principles we'll come across, but to understand the first seif, we need to understand these 3 principles. So again, I repeat, lah belah, liquid to the liquid, which means 2 liquids or a solid into a liquid. Practically, nowadays, rabbinically, you always need 1 in 60 kosher over non-kosher. Although midoraita, you only need 1 in 60 when it's min b'sheino mino, different flavors. And midrabanan, you always need 1 in 60. 2, if you have 2 solids, and again, a transfusion and transmission of taste, because they're touching each other, if both are hot, you need to cut away a thumb. If both, one is hot, one is cold, you need to cut away a sliver. However, if there is fatty involved, then actually it's more severe and you can't rely on just cutting off. And thirdly and finally, if there is a ta'arovet, if there is a mixture without a ta'am, without tastes, because they haven't necessarily touched each other, but they've just been mixed up with one another, then midoraita, it's enough to have a majority. Midrabanan, however, you cannot rely on the majority, 1 in 60, if it is min b'sheino mino, if there are two different tastes and flavors. Okay, those are the principles. Now we will see the Shulchan Aruch. Question.
So what's a sliver and a thumb? A thumb is like this thumb?
Yeah, a thumb. You have to, yeah, exactly. So you have to cut. So you have two pieces of kosher meat of meat, one kosher, one non-kosher. They touched each other on the edges. Obviously, non-kosher meat get rid of.
Touch each other when they're raw. They're raw.
If they're raw and if
Are
they're
they
raw,
raw
they're
or-
cold. If they're raw, they're cold, right?
Yeah.
So then you can just wash it, and that's good enough. Because there's no heat.
No heat is fine.
Yeah.
And then it's hot. You cut a thumb this big,
You have to cut a thumb breadth of
Thumb?
the meat. Yeah.
a thumb in width or in length.
Well, depending how much, yeah, if the whole width touched the whole width, you have to cut the whole width and length, depending on how
Or
much.
it's like a minced beef. It's minced.
Yeah, but they're mixed in with each other. That's a different thing. If they mixed in with each other, I'm talking about where they just touch each other on the sides.
Oh yeah, but touching.
If they got mixed in with each other, that's a whole. That's going to be that's different. Right.
Mm.
Okay. And what was principle 3? Okay, thank you, Mary. And principle 3 was that when there's no taste transfusion, 1 and 2, there were taste transfusions, either liquids or solids. Taste, principle 3, there's no transfusions. It's just as a mixture of kosher and non-kosher food. They haven't transmitted to one another, but I don't know what's what anymore. So here, midoraita, majority, Hachamim said, with min b'shino mino, you need 1 in 60.
1 in 60 times.
Yeah. Robert?
Question. So back to your 2 pieces of meat you bought. That somehow you've got 2 pieces of meat, and one's not kosher, and one's kosher. Sorry, you got 3 pieces of meat. 2 are kosher and one's not kosher. Are we saying you can eat all 3 pieces of meat?
If it's bin bimino, you can eat all 3 pieces of meat.
Right. And can you cook them together then? You've got these 3 pieces of
No,
meat.
you can't cook it together because then you can't cook, you have to cook them separately.
Right. So you can put water in the pan and cook 1 piece of meat, and do the same for the other 2 separately, and you can eat all of them separately. But the minute you mix any of that together, the leftovers, whatever, you've got to throw it all out.
So there's some Rishonim who held that you have to not eat 1 piece. Or
Yeah,
the halakha, we hold that really you could eat. Again, I don't think people in practice would do this, but halakha, you could theoretically eat all 3 pieces, yeah.
Okay, and can I just check that all these principles you've taught us, you were talking about kosher and non-kosher. If we're dealing with, basar v'chalav, there are different principles, right, of mixture, right? So these ones we shouldn't necessarily extend to basar v'chalav. Am I correct?
You're right. There is chana there in really small thing. It's the principles are basically the same. There's very small difference.
Minor nuances. Okay, thank you. Just wanted to understand.
The main principles are the same. Okay. Now, so that's all during the year. Now, one final introduction with regards to Pesach. If I have, so for our purposes, we're going to talk about kosher, non-kosher means chametz and non-chametz, chametz and matzah. So, if I have let's talk about principle 1. We said lach belach, liquid and liquid, go mixed into my Pesach soup, a drop of liquid which came from chametz, real chametz liquid, whatever the situation was, it was cooked with bread, etc., and they got mixed in. So you would say 1 in 60. This happened on Pesach. It got mixed up together. It happened on Pesach, 1 in 60. Midoraita, 100% that's true what I said. Everyone agrees. Midoraita, what I said is correct. That you can rely on 1 in 60 on Pesach itself, and even though you're definitely eating some taste of chametz, there's something there chametz, but nonetheless, 1 in 60, it's permissible because of the fact that it's nullified. according to the vast majority of the Rishonim, the Hachamim, however, prohibited this on Pesach. Why? Either because of the severity of Chametz, which is karet, as opposed to other kosher, non-kosher food, meat and milk, which is all only a negative prohibition, or because of the principle of davar shesh lo matirin, meaning kosher, non-kosher food, if I don't rely on nullification, I'm never going to be able to eat this piece of meat. Whereas Chametz and matzah got mixed up with each other, I can eat this soup after Pesach. So because it's something which can be nullified, can be permitted in the future, don't rely on nullification now when it can be permitted in the future. Does that make sense? That's two reasons given for the Rishonim why on Pesach itself we don't hold if 1 in 60. Midoraita, definitely. Midarabanan, though, for two reasons we've said, either because of the severity of karet of Hametz, as opposed to all other negative prohibitions, or because of davar shesh lo matir, it's something which will become permissible in the future. The Hachamim, according to the majority of the Rishonim, forbade this and said that you're not allowed to allow 1 in 60. You have to eat it after Pesach. As I said, this is majority. This is dependent. There's a text in the Gemara which is corrupt. Whether there's a discussion about what the exact text of the Gemara is. The Hilchot, one of the Geonim, and also Rav Hagaon, and also Rabbeinu Tam held that no, even on Pesach itself, even midrabbanan, regular rules which we've learned apply, and therefore 1 in 60 would apply even if the things got mixed up on Pesach itself. Shulchan Aruch, as you're going to see now, does not agree to that, but it's important to recognize his opinion. You'll see why in a second. Good? Is that clear? Says the Shulchan Aruch. Sif Aleph. Chametz bepesach oser ta'arufto ben bemino ben shelo bemino Be-Mashehu. A mixture of foods on Pesach, whether it's min bemino, which would normally be one, which would sometimes be 1 in 2, or min sheino bino, which is 1 in 60. On Pesach is Be-Mashehu. 1 drop is prohibited. I mean, if you got 1 against 1,000, is prohibited. Not like Rabbeinu Tam. Like the Rishonim, who say that on Pesach there's a special din. This is a din. This is a rabbinic law, by the way. This is a rabbinic law, and it's forbidden. Afilu ba'ana'ah, you can't have benefits from it. Okay, the Rama adds in quickly. Some of the poskim said what you can do is I can sell it to a goy and take out that, let's say this pot of soup would normally be worth £20. So I'd sell it in from £19, 95 pence, because of the 5 pence Hametz in it. So I'm not benefiting from the Isur. You understand? I'm not benefiting. That's what's up. But Rama says we don't do that either. You can't redeem it. You have to burn it all. Okay. But you don't need to kasher the utensils, and you can use the utensils for future Pesach. That's fine. Okay. That's din number 1. Din number 1 is asur b'mashu, even a drop. However, look at Mishnah Berurah Bet. If you got Mishnah Berurah in front of you, look at Mishnah Berurah Bet. If there's many other reasons to be lenient, Samchinan Hilchot desvile de Chametz b'Pesach shaveh l'shar isurin de b'shishim. You can, in extenuating circumstances, one can rely on Rabbeinu Tam and the Hilchot, Rav Hagaon, that it is nullified 1 in 60, which would mean theoretically, I never had a scenario like this, but theoretically, let's say you had a Shabbat Hatan on Pesach, which theoretically is possible. You're not allowed to get married on Chag, but I got married the week before Pesach, and I have a Shabbat Hatan, and I've got a huge party. I've got 100, 200 guests here. And a non-Jewish person passed over, and some of his Hametz dropped in, and it's all mixed in now. So according to what we've learned, Shulchan Aruch, whole thing has to go. Whole thing has to go. 1 drop of Hametz fell in. It's mixed in now. Then where it is, whole thing has to go. here, when there's other reasons to be lenient and other things as well, you're gonna need the Rav to weigh up the whole scenario and go through different points. But Rabbeinu Tam is there in the background. We do not follow him, but it's to be aware of in pressing, extenuating circumstances. There is perhaps something to allow on. Bearing in mind as well that this whole din is only a din derabanan. It's a rabbinic law here. Because midoraita it's batel 1 in 60. Good. Continue Shulchan Aruch. V'din ta'aravto kedin shar ta'arovet. Ela ma she'oser b'shar ta'arovot pachot m-60 oser b'chametz mashu. Anything which needs 60 during the rest of the year, so principles 1 and 2, which we talked about, there on Pesach doesn't apply. On Pesach, it's forbidden with a drop. But the other principles we learned, i.e. when it's not 1 in 60, i.e. taking away the thumb, taking away the sliver, that does apply on Pesach. אבל אם בשאר תערובות לא היה צריך 60 אלא קליפה או נטילת מקום, if you didn't need 60, you just needed a sliver or a thumb, אב בחמץ כן. So too on Pesach, the same applies. שחם בחם בלא רוטב, די בקליפה כשאר איסורים. That's a mistake. Klipa is a mistake, it means netila. Right? Ham beham, 2 hot foods with no liquid, with no 60 involved there. Because remember, we said that no liquid, it's only solids, and therefore you got kedei netila, taking away a thumb. That will apply on Pesach. And that's agreed by all, by the way. That's agreed by all. There's no mahloket on that. Theoretically speaking, you had a piece of hot bread which touched hot matzah on Pesach. You take away a thumb of the matzah, and you're good to go with the rest of the matzah. Here we go. Because here is not a transfusion. It's not a 1 in 60. Only when 1 in 60 we say that is a sur b'mashu, even with a drop. And he continues. Similarly, a piece of bread touched a piece of matzah, and they're both hot. There's nothing fatty or bubbly to transfer to each other. Because remember, we learned if they are fatty and bubbly, and the whole thing becomes a sur. You need 1 in 60 then. And then the 1 in 60 then on Pesach doesn't apply. So if there's no bubbly, lo asur ela makom magao bilvad, then you can just get rid of of what we said. A thumb, or if one's hot or one's not hot, then a klipa, a sliver, would be sufficient. So, to summarize, full stop here, and I'll take questions. To summarize what we've seen here. What we're saying here is that the principle which we learned of lah belah, 1 in 60 during the year, does not apply on Pesach according to the Rishonim and the Shulchan Aruch against Rabbeinu Tam. And this does not apply on a rabbinic level. The second thing which we learned of 2 solids touching each other, all the details we learned there, does apply on Pesach. Is that clear? That's basically what we've learned. Yes, Robert.
Sorry, something you said that seemed to be contradictory. You said at the beginning, one of the reasons why we held that we were more machmir or more strict on Pesach because the tarabit could become mutar after Pesach, and therefore why eat it on Pesach? Just stick it in the fridge, wait. But then you said you've got to destroy it when you were talking about the case of you're making your Shabbat Hatan. You don't have to destroy it, you just can't serve it to your guests. If you say it's 1 in 60.
You can't serve it, but I've got no food for them. That's my point.
No, but you said you got to throw it away. I think in what you were saying is that one of the poskim say you have to destroy it, and I didn't understand why they said that. Maybe I misunderstood you. I just want to be really clear. A mashehu, 1 in 1,000 drops in of whiskey into your chicken soup for Pesach. You don't have to throw the chicken soup away. You stick it in the fridge and you eat it after Pesach. Correct?
Correct. That's correct.
Right, fine. That's what I wanted to, because you did say at one point throw it away. Perhaps I misunderstood. Fine. You seem to suggest you throw it away.
No, it means
that was all. Just to clarify.
Good. Thank you. Okay. Now, leave the Ramah for the moment. The Ramah talks about the concept of steam. That's a whole new thing. We'll discuss it next week. Steam. But go to Sif Bet. Go to Sif Bet now. Chametz שיתערב בשש שעות ולמעד הלילה אינו עושה משהו, אלא דינו כשאר איסורים. So that which we said that on Pesach itself, even a drop, if it's a liquid and liquid, is only on the 7/8 days of Pesach. Although from Hatzot and onwards, from 8 hours before you can't eat, during the afternoon of Erev Pesach, you can, if they got mixed up, you can eat that on Pesach. Okay? Good? So this special din which we've learned only applies on Pesach, 7 days of Pesach itself. V'noten tam nifgam, and it says Rama, v'noten tam nifgam na mishari. Last principle for today. I know it's been a lot. Last point for today. If you have a mixture of two foods with each other, lach belach we learned, you need 1 in 60. Yeah. However, when the infusion of the non-kosher food does not in any way improve, i.e., it's not something good and you wouldn't want it, it's not beneficial, it's something bad, it's off, or for that matter, more than 24 hours, which means if I cooked in a pot, which the whole year round was Chametz pot, hot Chametz, hot liquid Chametz was cooked in this pot throughout the year. And then on Pesach, I took it and I cooked with this last week, a week ago. On Pesach, you should have put this away, but you forgot, you took out the wrong pot. And you cooked your Pesach food in this pot. What's the status of the food? Now, there's definitely one in 60, because whatever's absorbed into the walls it will be nullified 1 in 60 into the food. So that's fine. Right? Sorry, what am I talking about? Sorry, I was completely wrong what I said about the pots. There's a potential of being more than 160 because it's in the pot, so there's a potential of it being more than 1 in 60 because all the walls of the pot have absorbed, but that's still mutar because noten tam lifgam, which means a taste which has been in the walls for more than 24 hours. The di'avad does not, during the whole year, is not a problem. During the year, if I took in my non-Jewish neighbor's non-kosher pot, which he cooks completely non-kosher food in it, and he hasn't cooked it for a week, and it's clean, and I cook my food in it, it shouldn't have done that. It was asur for me to do that, and I forgot. I did a mistake. I'm completely allowed, everyone will tell you you're allowed to eat that food. On Pesach itself, the Shulchan Aruch holds the same halacha applies. Only the din which we've learned about the 1 in 60 is the differentiation. But this din still applies. The Rama disagrees. But the Rama agrees that from 6 hours, no 10 tam lifgam is mutar. Okay, that's enough for today. I'll go over the main points next week. We'll continue these principles. Lots more, and then we'll see how all this applies in practice. And by the way, when you understand these principles clearly, then you'll understand about the whole difference between Sfaradim and Ashkenazim when it comes to foods on Pesach, and why Ashkenazim are generally much, much, much more stricter than us. If you understand these principles we're going to learn next week, you'll see why for Sfaradim, Pesach is far more easier than people make it out to be. Okay?
Next question. Just last question. If I have a fridge freezer in the garage that I don't use during the year, I mean, I don't use it, but